According to Aristotle, who also was the first historian of Western philosophy, the oldest problem in philosophy is the metaphysical problem of identity and change. How can we conceive of something changing over time and yet remaining the same thing? Think of a leaf. In spring, the leaf is green, and in autumn, that same leaf has become brown. How is that possible? How can an object change in one or more respects? In our example, the leaf has changed in respect of its color properties, and yet remain one and the same thing. It's the same leaf at two different moments of time, in spring and in autumn, isn't it? This problem is also known as the problem of identity over time, or the problem of diachronic identity. In this first clip, we will analyze and define this problem more sharply by means of the famous example of the Ship of Theseus. In the next clip, we will not only consider Aristotle's answer, but also three more recent conceptions of persistence that analyze and solve the problem in different ways. In metaphysics, all possible answers to metaphysical questions should be taken into account, especially the extreme answers and the answers that deny one or more of the premises of the question at issue, because such answers characterize and help to grasp the problem. The two premises of the problem of identity and change are, firstly, that there is identity, and secondly, unsurprisingly, that there is change. These premises have been denied by Heraclitus and Parmenides respectively. Parmenides' slogan, "Whatever is, and what is not cannot be," expresses his view that the whole of reality is a plenum, meaning that reality is completely filled, so there is no room for movement or change. As the thought experiments and paradoxes of Parmenides' loyal pupil Zeno demonstrate, movement and change are merely apparent, and in reality there is only identity. Heraclitus, by contrast, states, quote, "No man ever steps into the same river twice," unquote. Why not? Because the second time, the water that flows past the man's legs will not be the same as the water that flowed past his legs the first time. Perhaps less notable, but nevertheless, the river will have changed a little as well. Moreover, it's no longer the very same man either, but the issue of personal identity over time is arguably much more complex than the problem of the diachronic identity of objects. So, in contrast to Parmenides, Heraclitus believes there is no identity over time, rather there is only change. Pantare, everything is in flux. Quote, "Everything flows and nothing is left unchanged." Unquote. Although Heraclitus process philosophy, the view that change is the cornerstone of reality, is appealing, we must recognize that it's very hard to think change true without identity. Consider the following example. I am now 184 centimeters tall. Suppose that in the next few years my godchildren, who are now less tall than I am, make a growth spurt and become taller than I am, whereas I remain 184 centimeters tall. So although I didn't change intrinsically, it would appear that I have changed extrinsically, or acquire relational properties. I used to be taller than my godchildren, but in the hypothetical future situation we are now considering, I will have become less tall than my godchildren. Peter Geach has introduced the term Cambridge changes to refer to such relational extrinsic changes as opposed to real intrinsic changes. However, if Heraclitus is right that there is no identity over time, there can be no real intrinsic changes, and all changes are merely Cambridge changes. Let us now consider the mesmerizing imaginary case of the Ship of Theseus. try to sort out your intuitions in a consistent way. By the way, there are various versions of roughly the same problem. If you are interested in the variations, look for instance for grandfather's axe, Locke's sock, and my favorite, Trigger's broom from the old BBC sitcom Only Fools and Horses. We start off with a ship that we'll call the original ship. After using it for some time, one part, say one plank, needs to be and gets replaced. Let's call the ship with the replaced plank the intermediate ship. Now, is the intermediate ship the same as the original ship? Are they one and the same artifact? Let's now take the next step. Suppose that gradually over time, all the parts of the ship need to and get replaced so that we obtain a ship that we can call the replaced ship, which has not a single part in common with the original ship. Now the question becomes, is the replaced ship the same as the original ship? Is your answer to the second question consistent with your answer to the first question? And if not, why not? Now let's take the last step, which has been added to the discussion by Thomas Hobbes. Suppose that all the old parts of the original ship that got replaced over time were carefully stored somewhere, and that subsequently they are being reassembled in exactly the same position they used to be in, so that we obtain a ship that we may call the reassembled ship. Now, which ship is identical to the original ship? The reassembled ship or the replaced ship? Or are they perhaps both identical to the original ship? And if so, are they identical to one another